As y'all have heard me say before, the most important part of planning any adventure are the snacks. And if you're looking for a delicious and nutritious snack that packs a real protein punch, crack into a good source of protein with tasty, healthy, wonderful pistachios. Each 1 ounce serving of wonderful pistachios contains 6 grams of protein, giving you over 10% of your daily value in that one serving. It's one of the highest protein nuts out there. And that's not all. Pistachios are also known for the fiber and better for you unsaturated fats, which may help keep you feeling fuller longer. Best part, wonderful pistachios come in a variety of flavors and sizes. Perfect for enjoying with your family and friends or taking them with you on your summer adventures for those snacks we're talking about. So whether you're dropping off the kiddos or running between meetings or about to climb a mountain, fuel up with a healthy and tasty snack. Wonderful Pistachios will be your new go-to. You can check them out at wonderfulpistachios.com and learn more about how these little green wonders can power up your day. Hey folks, welcome to Adventure Sports Podcast. I'm your host, Mason. Today is typically a Throwback Thursday episode, but we're going to do something a little bit different today. We're going to do a little bit of my new podcast, Florida Uncut. We're just going to feature like the first 20 minutes of this interview that I did with a rancher. And let me go ahead and explain what this new podcast is. I launched it last week, and I guess I'll just wind it all the way back. This show started out in Colorado by Kurt and Travis. I took it over in 2018, it's actually 5 years ago, like this month. Crazy. That is so crazy. Anyway, I moved back to Florida a couple years ago where I'm from. And something I've been thinking about a lot lately, and something I've always kind of been interested in is, we have adventures a lot of times on land that someone decided to protect at some point. So whether that be a national park or a state park or some sort of state forest, I mean, so many of the adventures we talk about on the show happen because people are protecting land all over the world. And I'm becoming more and more interested in how those pieces of land come to be. How does the national park come to be? How does, a protected area come to be that we eventually get to recreate on? And I want to be part of the force and the movement of protecting more and more land. Because here in Florida especially, if you're not familiar with the state, it's a very narrow strip of land. And it's the most popular state to move to in the whole United States. Like, so many people are moving here, and there's already a lot of people here. I think it's the third most populous state, only behind Texas and California. And so this decade is really important to Florida, to making sure the whole thing doesn't get turned into a parking lot. I've been all over the world on adventures. In Florida, where I live now, is as adventurous, as beautiful, as majestic, as awe-inspiring as anywhere I've ever been. It's truly a remarkable place, and it's so sad to me how few people actually ever see what we call the real Florida or old Florida. And it's a race right now to make sure people building houses and Walmart parking lots and everything else don't just destroy all of nature, cut down all the forests to make, condos and houses and whatnot. So this next decade is really important. And I'm really inspired. I'm really wanting to get involved in the fight here for conservation and for protecting these areas, because these are eventually areas we get to go and enjoy and have adventures on. So I'm all about it. And so I decided to start a podcast all about that topic. Even if you're not interested in Florida, it is a blueprint on how a place with lots of people, what seems like not a lot of room, can make a connected and protected network of land for not only our 130 plus endangered species to survive, but also for humans to recreate and have true wilderness experiences, as well as, plenty of people to live. So I think it's a really cool blueprint for anywhere else in the world that might be experiencing a lot of growth, or can get ahead of that growth by protecting large swaths of land ahead of time. So I'm super passionate about this. I'd love to share this first one. I'm interviewing a rancher, Jim Strickland, legendary rancher. He manages like a dozen ranches, probably tens of thousands of acres under his management, cattle ranches. And that's another cool thing about Florida. A lot of the land here is cattle ranching, and a lot of nature is on cattle ranches. Like the animals, the panthers, the bears, the deer, they don't know they're on a cattle ranch. They just know they're out in the woods somewhere. So it's kind of cool that working lands, I say, quote, working lands, is where a lot of nature is and a lot of nature happens. So Jim is going to talk to me about that topic. So if you're interested, check it out. It's Florida Uncut. That's the only interview or the only episode I have out right now. Every other week, we're going to release one. It's going to be a lot less episodes in this show, but still going to be doing the Adventure Sports podcast, but just excited to launch something new. I thought it was a great conversation. Hope you enjoy. All right, let's go ahead and dive in. All right, folks, welcome to the show. We're here at Blackbeard's Ranch with manager Jim Strickland. Mr. Strickland, welcome to the show. And I just want to say, too, I know you're busy. We've been talking about, I've only known you about a week, maybe a couple weeks, and you have been all over the place in that amount of time. Is that typical?
Yeah, that's pretty typical. I mean, usually a cowboy's day is different, even if you're on the same ranch. With us, we're scattered out and have some different places where we have cattle, so you're always moving around. And, aside from doing that, we're in different leadership roles in the Cattlemen's Association, Farm Bureau, our conservation endeavors. And, this is the ranch we're at now is Blackbeard. That's where we're sitting now, but there's about 5 other ranches that I take care of, and there's Strickland Ranch, and there's Quincy Strickland up there and around north of Ocala. So we're scattered out quite a bit.
And all that is under the name. What is there a name for all those together? They're all their own thing.
They're all a different entity. There might be different partnerships, that come. There's some that I own wholly. There's some that I'm partners with. Some I'm different partners with. We just had one group called Florida Cattle Ranchers Group, and we fed cattle at a feedlot up there in Strickland, which was owned by Don Quincy, which is also a partner of mine in Quincy Strickland in North Florida. And so we can dive into it, but we're scattered out everywhere. I wish I could say some of the times I stayed at one place, but I don't stay at one place very long.
No, you don't. You got a lot of entities to keep track of. And when I was reading about you, there's a lot of acronyms too in your life.
I just left. I was just appointed to the Farm Service Agency for the state of Florida, which really means that we are the gatekeeper for all funding for USDA that flow out through the agricultural entities, as particularly the money that it flows into the state from the federal government that flows back out to those of us that have been damaged by disasters. It could have been Hurricane Michael, it could have been Hurricane Irma, it could have been Hurricane Ian, that the Secretary of Agriculture, Vilsack, appointed me to this committee. So I'm just back from 2 fun-filled days up at the main USDA office in Gainesville, working on all the disaster that was happened from Ian in all the multitudes of counties and the multitudes of commodities, orange groves, which are, all varieties of citrus, farms, nurseries, cattle, is how are we going to, use the federal money and how are we going to distribute it? Talk about acronyms, I actually asked. I was like, can I get a list of the acronyms of which we're using here today? Because I don't know about 99% of them. They said, certainly. Guess how many pages I got of acronyms?
Oh, Lord have mercy.
I got 13 pages of acronyms. I'll share those with you if you want me to.
I have actually, in my pursuit of understanding conservation in Florida, and this is with any field, but I started a page or a document keeping track of all the acronyms. From with you, I've got my own list of all sorts of different associations and projects going on, and I'm kind of blown away by all the entities you deal with. But I really want to dive back. I don't know if you tell this story a lot, but I really want to hear how you got into this. Your dad was a rancher, and you grew up doing this. Where was that? What were you doing at that point?
Well, most of the time I either wanted to be a cowboy or wanted to be a surfer. So as long as let's just frame this
Which
up.
one did you do?
Both.
Okay.
I actually have a new surfboard down at the house. I don't use it very regularly, but the National Cattlemen's Association actually had it made for me. I served in some capacity with them, so it's interesting. I don't use that surfboard much. You can look at me and tell I'm not a surfer today. But I was raised in Manatee County, not too far from the beach. My father, when he got out of World War II, he met my mother at a boarding house. My mother was a social worker, just graduated from Florida State University. Still remembers when, it was an all-girls school. And so they met. Dad, after World War II, had open range cattle up towards Gulf Hammock, north of Crystal River, and over towards Ocala. And that's where all of us are from. When we migrated in about 1858, 59, the Stricklands migrated from Thomasville, Georgia area down to the Marion County citrus area. And we had not a lot of money. Still don't have a lot of money. Never gained a lot of fame and fortune along the way, but I think that one of the things that we've carried on through the generations is the love of the land and cattle. You don't make a lot of money off a cattle ranch. It's a slim margin of profit at best, but I think maybe that has been our downfall. We love the country, we love being in the woods, and we love following a cow through the woods. So when Dad came down here, he was stationed right there in Crystal River, which was his hometown. And he started Strickland Brothers Sausage right after the war, and he was peddling sausage out of probably about a 52 model Chevrolet. Met my mother at a rooming house before they had any hotels, and they got married. And I was raised in Bradenton, Florida. Went to school at Manatee High School, and also went to school at Walker Junior High School. When they had junior high schools before they had middle school. So I love surfing. I started surfing whenever I was probably around 9 or 10 years old, but I also loved the cattle industry. I loved being on a horse, but all our land was leased. That we don't come from a long line of people that have a large amount of land and money that they transferred down to us. We have leased land, and I've leased land my entire life. My father leased a lot. We did own some land out towards Parrish, Florida, and some up towards Crystal River where we had cattle, but the majority of it was leased. Dad died when I was 17 going on 18, and kind of left me with a lot of leased land to take care of for my mother. And so that's what I did for several years, and then eventually bought her out.
Let's take a quick message break and hear from the folks that help make this show possible. I'm not the most fashionable guy out there, but I do know good style when I see it. And I do take pride in looking nice at work and out on adventures. I want to look the part, but I don't want to be thinking about the gear all the time. And that's why I love Rourke. They've done the hard work for me. It's bold, bright, beautiful gear and clothing that's adventure ready, but also work ready and office ready and kind of daily life ready. It's high quality, long lasting gear that will quickly become a regular part of your adventure kit. And what's cool about all Rourke's gear is it has a story behind it. They make the journey a part of the story of the product. The team at Rourke does a lot of traveling and adventures themselves, and they are inspired by what they see and what they do to make the quality clothing and gear that they sell. So whether that's remote island chains, the streets of Jakarta, kayaking sea trails in Maine, or anything in between, Rourke has developed the perfect options for those experiences. In fact, I'm wearing the Rourke Bless Up breathable stretch shirt right now, and I have yet to wear this thing and not get comments from other people about how good it looks, about how bright it is, and about how great it is. And by the way, my new podcasting bag is the Accomplice Mule 45-liter bag. It's like a travel bag, but it's perfect for all my podcasting gear and my mic stand and all that. I love it. And whenever I travel, which is often, I don't have to do anything. It's ready to go. So if you're looking to step up your gear and apparel apparel game for travel or adventure itself, or just looking good at work but ready to adventure. As listeners of the show, you can get 15% off your first order going to roark.com and using the code ASP15. That's ROARK.com, promo code ASP15 for 15% off your first purchase.
The best travel gear isn't born in a factory. It's inspired by journeys taken by real people exploring the world. That's why I love Roark. Their team pulls designs and inspiration straight from the places they travel and have adventures. And for over 10 years, they've been exploring the globe to seek adventures on the road less traveled. Everything from surfing waves on remote island chains to exploring the streets of Jakarta, the Scottish Highlands, and almost everything in between. Roark has developed options for you. I'm actually wearing the Roark Bless Up breathable stretch shirt right now, and I was wearing a Roark shirt yesterday. I'm traveling right now, and you could probably hear the echo in the room, but I was at this event. This guy was speaking, and he looked down at me and pointed at me right in the middle of his talk and said, "Nice shirt." And I was like, "Thank you very much." It was a Roark shirt, and I've got my Accomplice Mule 45-liter bag. I love it because it can hold all my podcast gear, take it on the plane, but also holds extra stuff. I can put some clothes in there too, and if I didn't have my podcast gear, it could probably hold everything I needed for this trip. And it's water resistant. I love that. So Roark offers durable, comfortable styles inspired by the places they've been. And they've got their latest collection, the Hokkaido, featuring Japanese prints and patterns and Japanese manufactured Kaihara premium denim. So if you're traveling, Roark has the gear options. And for a limited time, if you're a listener of the show, you can get 15% off your first order. Go to roark.com. Use the code ASP15 at checkout. That's ROARK.com and use the code ASP15 for 15% off your first order.
That is plenty of that for now. Let's get back into the episode. So there's a lot there I want to visit, and I do have some questions that you got into. Where in Manatee County exactly?
Where not? Yeah, I was raised on 51st Street, right next to the country club, but we did not have a country club house. We had an old rambling house, and our neighbors probably got tired of us because we always had a cattle truck. We always had deer dogs or cow dogs.
Right there in town.
Right in the middle of town, about 4 houses down from the Braden Country Club, and Dad always had a little farm in the side yard that he grew onions and he grew sweet potatoes because, coming up poor, sweet potatoes you didn't need refrigeration for. He believed in having sweet potatoes and onions. We also had a smokehouse in the backyard. So the smokehouse burnt down. I know twice that the fire department had to come put the smokehouse out. So we were kind of like the Beverly Hillbillies with no money.
Yeah, absolutely.
So that was my life.
So why not be out in the country then? Why not?
Because,
what was keeping them in town?
Because Dad, we went going back to that slim margin of profit in your leasing land. Dad was from the cattle business on open range up towards Gulf Hammock. Whenever he moved down here and married my mother, he needed a job, and he had attended University of Florida but never graduated.
Okay.
He'd done a lot of things in World War II and gained some skills, but he went to work for the fire department. So he was working for the fire department in downtown Braden, Florida, and leasing. Back then, you could lease a lot of land, and Dad had connections to North Florida, where he's from, and they still had a lot of what we call cracker cattle, a lot of those little sharp-horned Spanish cattle that back then weighed about 600-700 pounds. And Dad would go up there and buy them by the semi-loads, bring them down here to South Florida, where we had better grasses, deworm them. We killed all the parasites that were in them, and these were not tame cattle; they were little wild cattle. And so he was a fireman, and he had a lot of leased land around Manatee, Sarasota, and some down in Charlotte County.
And he was also a property appraiser, wasn't he, for a while?
He was.
Was that at the same time of all this?
It was right after being a fireman. He happened to be sitting there one day, and there was a reporter for the Braden Herald that came by, and he always visited with the fireman just to check what was going on. And he and Dad had formed some sort of bond, and he said, "Hiram, why don't you run for property appraiser?" And Dad said, "That sounds like a really great idea." So how he financed his run, his first political run for property appraiser, he met who we call Uncle Archie Powell. He was the manager of the A&P grocery store by McKechnie Field in downtown Braden. They partnered and they planted 20 acres of sweet potatoes. And they said, if the sweet potatoes come in and make money, we'll have enough money for a political race. If the sweet potatoes don't, I'm not running for property appraiser because I don't have any money. Well, the sweet potatoes came in. He was elected property appraiser and then reelected, I do believe, 3 times after that.
Was the dream to always do cattle full time, or was it just, this is great as something to do on the side?
Dad was a little unusual that he was raised very poor. He was one of 9 children. His father was killed by a horse when he was 13 years old. So, he was raised pretty tough back in those days. So he was very frugal, but he realized that off-farm income, which we still use today across America, is, there's usually some of our family that work off the farm that being property appraiser afforded him a salary. He was good at it. He knew land very well. He knew valuations and he understood people. He ran a very good office, but he was also good about talking around campfires to cowboys because that's what he was. I mean, he was an open range cowboy. So he could sit around and talk. I think that skill set led him to Tallahassee, that he was the lobbyist for the Florida Property Appraisers Association for many years until his death. Every year during the legislative session, my father would be in Tallahassee. He would be lobbying for property rights. He'd be lobbying for and back then they called them tax assessors. That was before property appraisers. So Dad could walk both roles. He could be in town or he could be on the ranch. His real love was being in the woods. If I said anything about my dad, I would probably say he was a woodsman, that he loved cattle. He knew cattle, but he loved just being in the woods.
Just being out there. And that ultimately led, his dad passed away when he was 13. You were a little older, but not by much, 17, 18. There's a lot that happens from 13 to 17, but you're basically in that same situation as he was. And all of a sudden, all this responsibility is on your shoulders. Was that the only option? Is that the only way it could go? Is that just what you had to deal with?
No. There was another option. Keeping in mind that I was young, I lived in town. The majority, not all, but the majority of the land that we ran cattle on was leased land. And there were quite a few of my father's confidants and friends that said, Jim, you'll never make it in the cattle business. You'll never make it in agriculture, that, you aren't being left a lot of money. What you were being left was a lot of debt because Dad had bought some orange groves and bought some land before, and we went into a recession. So they tried to convince me to, just to sell all the family cattle and go get a job in town. Well, that wasn't my dream since I was about 7 years old, was not being on a horse and not being on a cattle ranch. And so we stuck it out. My mother stuck with me for a couple of years. I was very fortunate that around 19 or 20, I found a bank in town that would loan me the money to buy my mother out, which, of course, cattle were part of the collateral for land. And so I bought her out, and to me, that was my dream. That was my dream, was to keep doing what I wanted to do since I was 7 years old, probably. I think I started really riding with a cow crew when I was about 7.
So this was a dream of yours. You wanted to keep it going, and your mother was supportive, or at least wanted to get you on your feet.
Yeah, my mother was very supportive. But she didn't have the financial wherewithal to say, hey, I'm going to give you this. It had to be purchased. And it goes back to, it goes back to those people you meet, the people you know, and the mentors. And I have been very fortunate in my life to have partners and mentors. And I think it's still very important today in the endeavor, especially in agriculture, because we're less than 2% of the population. There's not a lot of us out there. So we need to find, and we need to encourage those children that want to be in agriculture. I don't care whether it's sugarcane farming, cattle ranching, nurseries, or tropical fish. We need to put those children with mentors and try to educate them and make sure that's what they want to do. And then we need to try to help them, because agriculture and these green space is what's really going to hold Florida together. It's held us together for a long time. But looking into the future, and I'm not looking 10 or 20 years down the road, but 500 years down the road, that's when we need to start. But that's where we need to look, is what are we going to look like? Because all of us, I don't know what your viewers' age, but I'm assuming that's younger than my 67 years old, but they're going to have children, and they're going to see such drastic changes in the next 50 years of our state of Florida, with the influx of somewhere around 700 1,000 new residents a day. We're going to bump 26 million people in the state of Florida pretty quick, and then you throw in all of the tourists that come to Florida for all the things that we love, the sunshine and the water and the fishing and the outdoors.
100 million plus a year, something like that, 150 tourists, that is. So you're right. You're one of the first people that I've talked to. And when I heard you speak at the meeting downtown a couple weeks ago, other than like the National Park Service, you're one of the first people I've ever mentioned conservation in the timelines, 500 to 1,000 years. A lot of people say the next generation or 100 years from now, but you're looking that far ahead. And what's crazy is how quickly it's changed in one generation for you. How much is gone. Double that in 2 generations, which you've also seen, or 3. It's unbelievable. So yeah, in just a couple more generations, it could be either gone or just irreversible. When did you start to see this, or like start to get a feel that this isn't guaranteed forever? Because you obviously at 17, you're probably focused on just making this work. At what age and at what time, or did something happen where you noticed, we got to not only work this cattle, pursue this dream, but also protect it?
There were several things.
All right, folks, that is the first 20 minutes of this interview. There's almost another hour to it, and Jim's going to really dive into some cool stuff here where he's talking about why he started changing his mindset around land and wanting to protect it. Just like me, I don't have very many adventures now where I'm not thinking about, okay, how did this place come to me? How do we protect this place? How do we make sure this river or this lake or this trail remains this beautiful nature forever? How do we make sure it doesn't turn into a resort or a golf course or whatever? And Jim started thinking the same thing when he saw all the land that he was using for cattle slowly disappear. It's unimaginable now, but he used to have cows that went all the way to the coast where we live, all the way to the beach, where the beach was one of the borders of the land he leased. Now he's pushed almost 30 miles inland with where his ranch is today. So that's how much development there's been going on in this area, in the Sarasota County, Manatee County area in Florida. But anyway, I'm going to be talking about these topics. I'd love for you to check out the show and support it any way you can. But yeah, wherever you are in the world, get involved. Make sure the places that we have adventures will continue to be there for generations to come, to inspire people for 1,000 years, not just right now. Get out there and have some fun. First of all, thank you so much for listening. It means the world to us that you choose to listen to the show. If you'd like to help us further, you can leave a review on iTunes, share us with your friends, your family. It goes a long way to growing the show. You can also support us financially through patreon.com/adventuresportspodcast. Link is in the show notes. And also, if you have an idea of who could be a good guest for the show, we're always looking for people to tell their story about the outdoors or adventure. So if you know someone, please reach out. Email us at info@adventuresportspodcast.com. And until then, get out there and have some fun.